Take back control. Stop letting algorithms decide your news. Get uncensored history and real knowledge to strengthen your mind, body, and spirit. Watch ad-free content now at iNeverKnewTV.com Premium. Speaking about the movie Sinners, right? Could you break down the presentation of African spirituality in that movie?
The way the film started off, and I do have to give a disclaimer if I spoil a little, but the fact that they mentioned the griot or the griot was essential. Because eventually when many of our documents are destroyed, especially there in Ouagadougou when we have to adopt the oral traditions, especially when we have our knowledge societies, and we have to train people in the memories of our ancestors, which is in voodoo as well. Once again, there's a memory of how we, once again, dealt with the Ma'afa. Particularly when there's a warning to say, listen, we can't make deals with these Europeans. We shouldn't be selling our own people because there will be a consequence if we make those deals. So once again, when we look at these stories, when we look at the griots or the koro, which is a major instrument that is still played in Senegal, these are the ways that we're able to once again install the memories of our people. And I like that the film touched on how music allows us to see the past, the present, and the future. Or rather, if we look at our own African conception of time, Sasa and Zamani, because we don't necessarily believe in that notion of future. It's more seen as potential time when you look at Sasa or Zamani, our limitless past.
Before you continue on the movie, can you delve deeper into this idea of potential time and not necessarily the future?
Absolutely. If you look at European thought, it's mostly linear. In other words, they never really want to look at the past. They always want to say, listen, we got to talk about progression. We got to talk about these new ideas, the new sub-norm or the new altern. But when you look at our own conception of time and space, it's quite different, which is why I use the metaphor of the circle of life. Not that everything repeats, but once again, we could return through our children, which is why it's important for us to produce children, which is important why we continue our lines. So once we understand Sasa specifically, yes, Sasa is dealing with present time, but also potential time. So not necessarily the future, but it could be something in the mere moments, or if you're planning something for the next generation. But once again, when you deal with Zamani, the limitless past, or memories of a past that we may not remember, it's quite deeper. Because history is living. It's a continuum when we talk about African time. That's why we state that life is eternal. So once again, the film starts off by not just dealing with African storytellers, but also different culture groups and how they're able to tell their own stories from their own epistemology or cultural foundations. But there's one scene in the quote-unquote shack when they're having their party and they're turning up. And the main character, he starts playing his instrument. Because you could tell he's tied from a specific spiritual line, maybe from a griot. And all of a sudden, he's mesmerized. Some people call it mounting in ice and voodoo, or someone calls it catching the Holy Ghost in the church. But all of a sudden, everyone's in a trance. And then you begin to see images of the past from African spiritual systems, images of the present, but also the future with different forms of music like blues, jazz, later the last poets, hip hop. And I found that scene very powerful. That's probably the most powerful scene in the film, in my opinion.
It brings together the past, the present, and the potential of the future. I got you.
And one of the most powerful scenes is right outside. That's when the vampires catch sight. And all of a sudden they see a light. And they get a hunger for it because for some reason, they don't have aspects to that past.
The vampire. I like that. Yeah. No, it makes sense. All right, cool.
That's why they coming in. It's like, let me in.
There's a large group of Europeans that don't find solace in European traditional spiritual practices, and they're looking elsewhere for it. So how does the movie highlight that? Even though I know some people internalize it as just music, but is there a deeper meaning where the vampire is looking not only to exploit, but something else that his spirit needs?
Well, what's interesting is that vampire was Irish. If you understand the history of the Irish, particularly how the British caused the potato famine and their oppression, is quite interesting. But to touch on your question, I had to ponder on it because that's a very good question. If I look at the ancient past, it almost seems as if it's a regurgitation, as if they fully don't understand our systems, especially when you look at Greek and Roman society. It's as if they're almost attempting to capture what we've done to build our high civilizations, but they can't necessarily get it.
Can't catch it.